So what on earth is Blood Bowl? Well, for those of you who may not be familiar with this wonderful game, let me explain the basics. So Blood Bowl is a sports game in which two teams of fantasy characters try to score as many touchdowns as possible by getting the ball into the opposing end zone. The game is split into two halves of 8 turns. Each turn, a coach activates one of their players and makes one action with each player. But beware, if something goes wrong, you'll suffer a turnover and the turn will end. A flip of the Blood Bowl coin decides which team will be the kicking team and which team will be the receiving team. Then, starting with the kicking team, each coach begins by setting up 11 players in their half. You must have 3 players on the line of scrimmage, also known as the halfway line, and no more than 2 players can be in each wide zone. Aside from this, coaches can form any formation that they wish within their half. So once both teams are set up, the kicking team will place the ball in any square in their opponent's half of the pitch, and then the ball will scatter out from there, and you'll also get a random event. These can range from nothing at all to items being thrown onto the pitch injuring your players, or maybe even a riot that will waste a few turns of the game. Once the kickoff has been taken, the receiving team takes their first turn. When a player is activated, they can perform one action. That could be to move, throw a block, blitz, or pass the ball. A player making a move action may move a number of squares up to their movement allowance. The squares around a player make up a tackle zone. So if a player moves out of a square and an opponent's tackle zone, they will need to dodge by making an agility test. If they pass, they dodge successfully. If they fail, they are tripped up and it's a turnover. If a player moves into a square in which the ball is lying, they must attempt to pick it up by making an agility test. If they succeed, they can carry on moving. But if they fail, it's also a turnover. Now, blocking. A player may make a block action, but they can't move, and when they do, they throw a block at an opposing player in an adjacent space. A block is basically one player trying to knock the other player down to negate their tackle zone, or even take them out of play entirely with an injury. Blocks can push players or knock them down, but if you do roll badly and get those skulls, your own player can be knocked down, causing a turnover. Blitzing. So, once per turn, one player may make a blitz action. This lets them both move in the same way as a move action and block an opponent. This is often one of the most important moves of a turn for a team, so think carefully before you make your decision on where you're going to blitz. Passing. Once per turn, a player making a pass action can move and throw the ball. They don't have to have the ball at the start of the action as long as they pick it up while moving. You'll then test agility to throw it, with longer throws being harder, and the receiving player has to test to catch the ball. This can make passing a risky proposition as you've got to make 2 tests as part of the action. If you fail either of them, it will be a turnover. If you're next to another player, you can also hand off the ball. No need to test the agility to pass the ball as they are stood right next to you, but the receiving player does need to catch it, scoring. So, if a player carrying the ball crosses into the other team's end zone, or a player standing in the end zone catches the ball, you get a touchdown. Play then will stop, and the teams will be reset for another kickoff, except this time, the person that scored will be kicking the ball, and their opponent receives. So at the end of the last turn, the player who has scored the most touchdowns will win the game. It's pretty simple, right?